Good morning, fellow Star Wars fans. This is Drew Kaplan, Star Wars Maven, and here's some quick hot takes from the fourth episode of the second season of The Mandalorian, The Siege. Well, after last week's episode, which was pretty awesome, I think there was a lot of speculation, which proved to be true, that this episode would be a side adventure. So with those expectations in place, I was very happy. First of all, there was we get to see a little bit about Grief Karga, Cara Dune, see a little bit what they've been doing on Navarro since we last saw them in the first season. We also got to see really interesting scenes towards the end as our protagonists were fleeing the Imperial base, which was really neat. We get to see speeder bikes, we get to see TIE fighters, so really neat stuff as far as the sort of stuff basically like the original trilogy, right? A little bit of familiarity, which was nice. Now, perhaps the most exciting stuff was sort of at the end, basically. One thing that I was really fascinated, perhaps the most fascinating thing for me, was this mention by Dr. Pershing of M-counts. Now, M-counts, oh my God, how is it not midi-chlorians? Now, this is the first time we've heard even a reference, as far as I know, please correct me if I'm wrong, anything about midi-chlorian counts since, well, 1999 in The Phantom Menace. I think, as far as I know, Star Wars materials have avoided it like the plague. They don't want to touch it. It's not popular with fans. But this is really interesting. As we see later on, it seems to be that Moff Gideon was creating like a little legion of Darth Vaders, which is really interesting. He wants to create them, which is really scary, really crazy. It actually kind of reminds me of Captain America Civil War with all the different other sort of super soldiers, other winter soldiers. So that reminds me of this super powered bunch of Darth Vaders running around is what Moff Gideon has in mind. So that's an interesting development. I'm really fascinated by the M-count thing. If you think about how it gets mentioned in The Phantom Menace, it's by the Jedi Council. They're talking about it. So this is something that could still be sort of in Imperial records because they could have just absorbed that way of thinking, which is, for me, really fascinating. And we do get to hear a little bit, and this was really okay, I am a little frustrated that the New Republic pilot mentions that there have been Imperial stuff going around, and this is not an isolated incident on Navarro, that they're actually got something bigger percolating. And it clearly the Moff Gideon and his folks, his cohort, are up to a lot of no good, and it would be helpful if Grief Karga and Cara Dune were cooperative, would even just share intel. That was really frustrating. But we get to hear, and this is a really touching moment, that Cara Dune's from Alderaan. And she, as she says, she lost everyone. That was an incredible moment. It reminds me of, there's some comics from back in 2015 that see Princess Leia trying to help serve basically Alderaanians after the explosion of Alderaan, trying to help them. So this was definitely an interesting motivation for Cara Dune, a really deep hatred for the Empire. So it was an interesting episode. Definitely left some really interesting things certainly the back half of the season. Although especially with the Dr. Pershing just sort of put in there, since we haven't seen him since the early part of the first season, it seems like they're definitely thinking far into the third, fourth seasons of the show. So I'm really curious to see how this develops, and hopefully we can see Ahsoka this season. We shall see. So thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you.